Secret friends, unite!
Welcome to the Secret Friends Unite podcast, episode 369. Dude, I'm your host, Todd Oxtra, joined by Charlie Carden.
Woo! We have a 69 coming up on Code 47, the episode after next, and I think I wrote Snicker in the notes, and I have a female co-host, Katie, who doesn't put up with my shenanigans, so I may have to leave that out and just be an adult. Yeah. We'll see.
This is for mature audiences, yes. Hopefully, although our comedy is less than mature, but that's okay. But we're going to class up the joint this week, Charlie, with our special guest, a new member joining the Secret Friends Unite this week, and that is Mr. Eric Holst. Eric, how are you tonight?
I am good. How are you, my friend?
Doing good. Glad to have you.
Yes, this is very exciting. So, Eric, when we bring a new member of the Secret Friends Unite on, we ask you to give us your geek origin. So tell us all about how you became the nerd you are today.
Sure. My origin story starts with A New Hope. My dad took me to a drive-in, and I watched it while eating fried chicken, which I remember so vividly. And I just remember, being 4 or 5 years old, and that story just kind of resonating with me that this is what a story could look like. And then, fast forwarding a couple of years, I started to get mostly into video games. A lot of what I do in the geekdom ends up in the video game world. But as far as comics and movies, I spent a lot of time collecting comics. I ended up, when I was 13, I worked at a comic book shop. And they paid me in comics, and I did the pull lists for them. So
under the table.
And Todd and I were talking before the show that was right before, for me, it got super interesting with Jim Lee and Todd McFarlane and Chris Claremont, and that was kind of like my seminal years. And then after that, it's just been kind of a hodgepodge of whatever interests me at the time. I'll kind of float all over the place. I am not, Charlie, I know you're super into Star Trek. I don't really have a genre I'm super into. I will float around and find different things that I find interesting and stay there for a second.
It's okay. Todd's the same way. He doesn't actually
I'm exactly the same way. I don't go deep. I go wide. Yes. I love so much. It's hard to devote myself.
That's what she said. Oh, okay. Sorry. See, there you go.
So with that, Eric, do you have like a favorite thing right now?
Oh, man. Comic-wise, I would say my two favorite things, and I know we'll get to this later in the show, but my two favorite things right now are that Todd McFarlane is doing that Year of the Spawn, and he's finally launching a Gunslinger Spawn comic book. I think we're 4 or 5 issues in. That's probably my favorite thing I'm reading right now. And then watching, while this isn't necessarily geeky, 1883 on Paramount Plus.
Todd, why don't you tell them about how much you've been all over my ass about talking about that show?
No, Eric nailed it though. It's not geeky in genre, but you continue to bring it up.
You just continue to encourage me because of your disdain.
No, it's like.
Look, I want you to know I listened to the show. I read all of the notes. At no point did I say I could not bring up cowboy stuff. So I'm sorry if I broke some sort of code that there are cowboys.
It's just for Todd. Todd doesn't do a lot of period piece stuff. He wouldn't watch Mad Men. He's just not into that kind of stuff.
No, I don't mind that. I like a good Western. I like that. And it's funny because we 1803 definitely period piece. Now, when you talk about the modern show with Kevin Costner, that's Dallas. That is exactly modern day Dallas. It's there's nothing period piece about it. It is just who's cheating on who's doing. That's all it is. It's a soap opera for adults. That's all it is.
And that was kind of what my wife and I were talking about. It's I'm not really sure I need another Dallas in my life, but this thing is pretty cool. So
we got totally sucked in by Yellowstone, by the preceding series. So anyway,
well, and it's funny because 1883 is the creator basically said that's all it is. It's one snapshot. It's one story, which I think is phenomenal to tell a story in one season. And then it's we don't have to continue it and make it like The Walking Dead with 18 seasons. Yeah. The objective was not to get to Yellowstone. We're going to tell it in real time. We're going to have 85 seasons or whatever it would be. 102.
We're going to have to walk. It's 1883 on foot.
Yes, yes. So very cool. Well, Eric, thank you for joining us. And as I mentioned in the pre-show, I said, we're going to pick a cover, and before we get into it, we want you to tell us what you think happens in Fantastic Four 369.
I mean, I don't have any. I mean, other than clearly Susan Richards is dead, and she is now. I don't know if she has a safe word. I feel it's like what's happening in this episode. I don't know. This one is so crazy. And you and I were talking about this. Like, this is you guys are getting into rarefied air where there just aren't a lot of comic books past 370 or 380. But this one is certainly. I don't have any idea what happened here.
And this is super deep. And again, I'm seeing characters from East Coast Avengers, West Coast Avengers. You're seeing
X Factor.
Yeah, you're seeing Hulk is wearing like half of an outfit. X Factor, you got Strong Guy there, but you've also got the regular X-Men with. It's just a crazy. You got the old school Drax the Destroyers in the mix.
Absolutely, you got Moondragon. You've got a variety of just team members, and you've got Thanos in the very bottom too. So
right. Well, because it was an Infinity War crossover. So that was right when Thanos first came back. So that was nuts. As I mentioned before, Fantastic Four was the comic my brother followed when we were kids. I picked it up in subsequent years because I really love the characters. But this was a dark period. We've done a string of these recap covers that were that have been the Avengers run, which I gave up on because Todd and Katie kind of made me, because I'm like, no, I'm going to stick it out. But it's just
the dark ages of Marvel for everything except probably the X-Men was during this time. It was just a lot of creative, what was going on? I mean, is this like Reed Richards, like dark fantasy coming forward? Like, Susan, I was scared to tell you what I'm into. I might get stabbed by your helmet, but
then unfortunately her kink turned into a thing for everybody. So it was some kind of weird group sex thing. You know what? It's too much. It's too much. You got to let it go.
Yeah. Yeah, we like. There's a reason why Marvel went into bankruptcy and then was acquired by Toy Biz and then eventually Disney. So there you go, Disney. This is what you inherited. So enjoy.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you better believe it. But moving on from there, now it's time. Let's get on I think we're down on the budget. We got to get on the bus and get down to Hollywood and Vine and have a little chit chat with our favorite senior news correspondent. That would be Madam Webb. So let's go.
Now it's time for Madam Webb's Rumors and News. Take it away, boys.
Thank you, Madam Webb. Oh, my goodness. Eric, just to tell you, just to be a little nervous, we've got a senior citizen who gets a little annoying at times. So she may come to you because she knows you're in media. She's looking to break into media at this point. So if you're truly looking for a raucous senior citizen to be on any type of, live broadcast, be a voiceover artist, you know what? We'll send her resume along, although it will be on the back of a postcard or it will be transmitted by the Pony Express.
I feel like old-timey TikTok might be a thing. She could probably do that, right?
You bet. Just like tintypes, like, hey, check it out.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Is that the machine where you had to scroll it and look at it like at Henry Ford Museum?
I believe that's like a Nickelodeon technique.
Yes. She could be a Nickelodeon, but it'd be more like a penny farthing. I don't know. It'd be something cheaper, so a little bit on the lower end.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm going to jump in right here. This is great news for Trekkers. We have been kind of besieged for many years for the fact that Star Trek the Motion Picture, the director's cut. Now, the original film came out in 1979. This director's cut came out in 2001 before the death of the director of the film, which would be Robert Wise, Hollywood royalty. A hotly debated film, visually gorgeous, kind of slow moving, that a lot of people don't really get with. But for us dyed-in-the-wool Trekkers, we really dig it. And I really dig it because it was, the TOS films for me was my exposure to a lifelong love of Star Trek. And I really enjoy this film kind of for its own merits. But this poor film, this director's cut, has languished for the last 21 years in standard definition. And Todd and I were talking about SD as we frequently do. Only Star Trek The Next Generation, the original series, and Enterprise are in HD in the Star Trek catalog of television shows. Both Voyager and DS9 are not. It's kind of a tough watch. So this is amazing news. Over on Paramount Plus, on April the 5th, which is First Contact Day, reference to Star Trek First Contact, the day that humanity met the Vulcans within that film, we are getting an awesome UHD release of this on Paramount Plus, which is very smart of them, because they're going to drive people to that site. So this should be incredible. It's a great cut. They added a lot of really wonderful things to this film back in 2001 that were storyboarded but not completed back in 1979. So it's new effects, but it was not new crazy like George Lucas and the Ugly driving into Mos Eisley with the, don't even get me started with the special editions. But at any rate, this is very exciting. It's going to be followed also by an event in May, a couple, 3 dates in May. At Fathom Events, where this is going to be in movie theaters. I am dying to see if there's going to be one here in GR. I don't know if there is yet because the tickets aren't on sale until April the 8th, so after the film comes out. And then a home video disc release is scheduled for the fall, which is one of the rare discs that I will actually purchase because I keep hard copies of all the Star Trek stuff. That's about it. I don't do physical media. I've pretty much given it up. But I make a huge exception with this kind of stuff. So this is awesome news, and I just absolutely cannot wait to see it.
It's pretty cool, Charlie, that this, when I looked at the trailer for it, I'm like, that's impressive. And that's what I always talk about, enhancing the experience. Obviously, you've got the original experience that you want people to have, but it's awesome to see it then updated to look like how people would expect it to look. Because it wasn't the special effects that were like people wanted to watch the movie for, even though it probably looked better than the original series. But it's taking that expectation to like modern, aesthetics, and it's like we want the story to stay the same, but we don't want the visuals to like, oh my God, what is that? I can see the wires hanging down as they're moving around. I thought this looked really cool, very neat. But I think the problem is you're going to have with Star Trek fans, a lot of them are so like angry that they can't watch it on syndication on Channel 50 in Detroit as they would love. But there's no physical release for this, right? It's only going to be on Paramount Plus.
Well, that's what I was saying. The physical release will follow in September.
Oh, they have noticed that. Okay, so first dibs, you go there. But I was expecting, that's because that's one of the things. Not everything going to a streaming service these days will go to physical media. So that's pretty cool.
It's more and more rare. And you can tell, obviously, the demand is something that they factor in. But they don't want to, kind of cut off their noses to spite their faces, which is why they're releasing it 6 months from now. You know
very
what I mean?
Cool, very cool. Yeah. So, Eric, what's your stance on like taking old things like this version or like the special editions where they update them because of data technology? Are you a fan of it? Is it a case by case basis?
I would say it's probably a case-by-case basis. With this one, I agree. I think the trailer looked really great. I love it. I mean, my background is in marketing. I love the fact because right now, if you are an Xbox user, you get a month of Paramount Plus free, so you can watch the Halo show.
Yep.
So the chance that, these new users of an Xbox that maybe got one for Christmas might stumble across this platform and that be their entry point into a new part of the sci-fi universe, I think is absolutely genius. I love all the things about it. And then, Charlie, I know 6 months is a long time to wait, but that's kind of clearly for the hardcore, right? Where
correct.
This
that's
to
what I would say.
This is to get people to just kind of go, what is this? I've never heard of this thing.
Exactly.
Go.
Correct. Yeah. Exactly correct. Yeah, exactly. So I will, when that pre-order becomes available, I'll pop that out on Amazon and then it'll just show up at my door, but I will have watched it any number of times. When we do shows with my Star Trek club, I have a binder this like a DVD binder this thick and this tall. I have every disc of every classic release that if we are at a big enough show, I just have a TV there and I have my little Blu-ray player behind it and I just swap the discs out. But that stays with my show stuff. So that's not how I watch the episodes. Sure. I purchased TNG because it's in HD on Vudu just because I want to have that, but it's also accessible on Paramount Plus. But I have been the person that, I become the troll when I see people bitching on the groups, on all the Star Trek groups on Facebook, like, oh my God, I'm watching Voyager for the first time, but they're taking it away. How can they do this? I'm like, because they want the money and they want you to subscribe to services. Like, people don't understand business. It's just, that's great that you have enjoyed Netflix for the last 15 years and having everything be in once, but it's crowded marketplace. And this is capitalism. So buckle up and, put what didn't Dennis Leary say, put on your helmet. Life sucks. Get a fucking helmet. Lock it down. Lock it down. It's going to happen. It's going to cost. So go out and buy the discs or buy it on digital, but zip it because that's just the way it's going to be.
Yeah, the days of physical media is, I always thought there would be like a niche market, kind of like the record market, where you can still buy vinyl to a certain extent. And because they know there's and Warner Brothers did that for a while with like their like niche market where they still make a certain amount of discs. It would be more expensive. That may come in the future where it's like, I only like physical media. Maybe they'll do that. But I just think these property owners only want people to subscribe rather than buy and not connect. So I think that's the future. And maybe you'll be able to go to library and pick up a copy. But even you see libraries are going to like their digital services for like streaming media as well. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. Next story. And Eric and I are coming to the table with this story where our friend Charlie, unfortunately, failed to do his homework in advance.
Very, very busy doing many important things.
Yes, absolutely. No. But, this is a really cool story because wait.
Hold on. I'm going to close my eyes.
Close your eyes, yes.
As you describe it to me, I'm going to see it in my mind. So I'm ready.
Okay, ready. Absolutely. And I'm going to hand this over to Eric after I've just introduced this. So essentially, we were told there would be more deleted scenes released for the Batman after it was released. And I'm like, are they going to do it when it's released on HBO Max? Or are they? No, they're just going to release essentially a 6-minute cutscene of the Joker being introduced to the Batman in a scene that seems familiar to like Silence of the Lambs or something, going to see Hannibal Lecter. Very cool, with the Joker played by Barry Keoghan, I believe is his name. And we got to see, who was in Eternals.
Yeah, he was that's the thing about the Eternals. You don't know any
Druig is his name.
None of them, they were all super interchangeable. Nobody cared. But that's my commentary on the Eternals. Anyway.
Yeah, he could basically change people's minds, Druig. So Eric, obviously, if you've not watched this, I'd recommend people look at it. It's very cool, very neat. And it definitely feels like this is like, obviously what the director Matt Reeves is going after. He's going after like these serial killer vibes in different mediums. So it's very cool. So Eric, you said you saw this like 8 times. That's phenomenal. What'd you think?
I know you guys have a segment later where it's like, what are you watching? And this is the thing that I'm currently addicted to. Because once I figured out that they had made their own lenses to get that out of focus depth of field feel, and you're just dealing on another level. And one of the things I would say before I get into spoilers is if you have not seen this film, you need to enter this film thinking that it is a detective film. It's Seven with Batman, not Marvel and space lasers, right? Like that's not going to happen in this film. And if you're entering waiting for that to happen, those tend to be the people that hate this film. But I'm currently
3 hours in, you probably should have figured that out.
Yes, but like the aesthetic I think is very cool. And what I like about this scene is I think this scene would have ruined the movie for me because it would have taken all of the power away from the Riddler when you bring in the Joker, right? And what I would love to see out of this introduction is I want to know how long they can keep this going, right? Because they're running that Riddler website that's doing new riddles every single week, that's pushing the story further off of the screen, and then doing stuff like this where, like you said, they're going to be releasing a bunch of deleted scenes. I would love it if the Joker is not the main bad guy in the next movie, but is Hannibal Lecter. So Bruce is going to talk to the Joker about Hush or the Court of Owls or whatever the rumors are for the next film. I think that would be a great way to kind of keep the Joker at bay and make these these little vignettes kind of high voltage and high tension, because it's watching this whole interaction kind of unravel in 5.5 minutes. To me, that I've watched it so many times because I think the camera work is incredible. I think the acting is fantastic, and the soundscape. For those who haven't seen it, or even if you have, Todd, I'll say this to you: just watch the first 60 seconds. They run the sound of that jail door closing.
That I could have done.
For way longer than it needed to have happen to kind of set what's how locked down this character needs to be. We're gonna play this noise, because it's just an establishing noise. We're in a jail, but we play it for like 90 seconds to say, hey, we're really locking this guy down. And I just love the storytelling in that 5 minutes and can't wait to see what happens. But more importantly, Todd, how much longer they could push this story without releasing another film.
Oh, absolutely. Rodalata.com is I'm probably killing the pronunciation, is the website you go to. It was at the end of the movie, you went to it, they showed a website. Very cool idea. I went to it and I got the riddle wrong. So I'm not that smart, but it's fun that they're doing that and they're having a good time with it. This will be on HBO Max in, I think, April. They said 45 days after its release, which is great because then people who still were nervous about the pandemic, have kids and things like that, can see it and experience the fun. I don't know if the scene will be like an addition added in. So I'm curious how they're going to do that. And maybe it's like an extras portion that you can experience later. Or maybe there'll be like a Riddler takes over or that Riddler takes over HBO Max as well on that page, which would be even cooler, right? Add on to the mystery.
Let me say two quick things, though, because you said kids. Unless you show your kids Pennywise movies for fun, do not take them to this movie.
They just might. They just, taking kids to Deadpool. There you go.
No. You put your kids to bed, then you watch this. But this is like spending $180 for a babysitter so you can see this.
But here's the thing. Yeah, I hear you. But here's the one thing I would say, and Todd, I assume you've both seen it.
Oh, of course.
The Foley work in this movie almost demands to be seen in a theater, right? Because you're going to miss the amount of work that they go into that. So I get it if you want to watch it at HBO Max and you want to stay home and you don't want to go to a theater. But if you have any interest, it next to Dunkirk might be the most impressive Foley work I've ever heard.
Oh yeah,
it's amazing.
Dunkirk was spectacular in the theater. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I that movie, the sound and just the experience was unreal, and that's why theaters still matter. But I get it if you can't, because some people just can't get away. They can't afford the whatever $100 a night babysitter.
Right,
it's crazy.
Yes, right.
Yeah, but this is fantastic. I loved it, and it's funny because in the Titans TV series on HBO Max, it's essentially the same thing where the Titans see Edward Nygma for very similar information about a serial killer, Jason Todd in this instance, the Red Hood. And it's interesting they use that mechanic of using someone who likes riddles or someone who knows the enemies they're facing for more information. It's that classic trope, but I thought really well done. And it's really making more excitement for this franchise, which is done phenomenal.
Magnificent. Well, now I will be shamed into watching it post-op, and we'll see what I think. But yeah, I enjoyed the film very much, but yeah, I can even just with the still I saw of his face. Good God! I thought it was Cameron Monaghan in the theater because I didn't have any frame of reference because it really aped that performance from the Gotham TV series, which I never finished. I think that ran. What did that run? Did that run 5 or 6 seasons? I never finished.
It ran long and it got really crazy, but still parts of it were fantastic.
Yeah. And I assume that's probably still on Hulu, so it would be worth kind of tuning in.
Yeah, that's Cal Kestis, Starley, doing the Joker. Crazy.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, and the Ian from Shameless, which if you've not watched that show, you ever need to feel better about yourself in your life, that's a good show for it.
Absolutely. Next story this is very cool. Apparently Nova, who is another young hero who essentially got power thrust upon himself in the Marvel universe. Richard Ryder, who, part of the galactic power of the Nova helmet. He is apparently coming to the MCU in either, we don't know yet, either a series of a TV series or a movie. This is pretty cool. And apparently one of the writers behind Moon Knight, which is coming up on Wednesday, which you probably watched when you're listening to this, is actually behind this show. So what do we think? I mean, Eric, Nova, is that a name? Obviously, the Nova Corps in the Guardians of the Galaxy is well known, but Nova was kind of like the hero before we actually even knew about the Nova Corps in the comics.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. I know Charlie's been making jokes about the Eternals, and I think the long-standing joke is that Hawkeye should have been the movie, Eternals should have been the show. And that to me
maybe
tends to be the if you have 88 characters in a 2-hour movie, like it's easier to break them up into 20-minute vignettes so that I actually know. So I actually know who Druig is and why I should care about him. Whereas if you're going to do Die Hard with arrows, that could have been a Christmas movie, right?
Right. Die Hard with arrows. Nice.
But so that to me right now, I think Marvel they know what they're doing. I think the only question for me as a fan is to your point, Todd, is this a show or is this a movie? And then if it's a movie, where does it land? And if it's a show, what is it pushing to? Because with Moon Knight, that's the question: is like, are we moving towards the Ebony Blade, and what those guys are going to go do, the MI5 or whatever that was called, the supernatural crime fighting Marvel universe. Are we going to live in the London universe? Is that going to be
with Pete Wisdom and that group?
Yes. Are we doing that? And then if we're bringing Nova in, and we know that there's an end coming to Guardians 3, how do those two things sort of circle together, and what's the outcome of that?
Yeah, and that could be a spin-off of Guardians 3, because apparently that's the end of that franchise, but doesn't mean those characters will cease to exist, and doesn't mean that you can do the baton handoff to more characters that bring the galactic part forward. And we've always talked about Marvel's looking for younger heroes as the current characters like Thor age in reality. What do? You bring in new characters that have come through, like Kate Bishop, essentially. Who are these? Some of the other young characters I'm missing.
Kamala Khan's getting her deal, And Richard, it's funny, Richard Ryder is an ancient character, because he's one that was kind of launched part and parcel to Spider-Man. If you look at the first issue of his first title, Spider-Man's in it, and and all characters from the Spider-Man cast. Mary Jane's in there, I think. The Daily Bugle factors in some way. Him, and then obviously Carol Danvers back. These are all characters from the 70s. But again, what's old is new. That part of it doesn't really matter. But as opposed to Kamala Khan, who is a new character, Miles Morales, who we've not had targeted for the MCU, but it's inevitable. I feel like everything is kind of destined to be a show, because movies have lost so much momentum with COVID and with the virus, and we've all really transitioned into being able to buy bigger televisions, because we all got those Biden bucks. I'm going to buy a huge TV. But then just being able to enjoy things kind of at your own pace on the small screen. People still bitch about, oh, God, I still got to wait for the next blah, 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 which has always been the way TV worked until Netflix came along. So it's like, knock it off. But I feel like people are enjoying things more sitting at home. And then, to your point about the Eternals, it would have worked as a show, because as a movie, it was like, it went over like a fart in church. It was just, you just didn't, I watched it because I had to go see Eternals in the theater so we could talk about it on the show. My wife, April, didn't go. So we finally watched it when it came to Disney Plus back in November. We got through that movie, which is like 3 hours long, which, everybody thinks they can pull off a 3-hour movie these days, which most can't. And she just turns to me at the end and says, that was a long movie about a bunch of characters that I didn't give a shit about. Don't think we ever need to watch it again. Direct quote. And to my regard, she's not wrong. I wouldn't say if she was wrong anyway, because she's my wife, but I think she's right.
What I said wasn't quite that. What I said was, when Harry Styles shows up, I'm like, why didn't we do this 3 hours ago? Because this is the most interesting thing that's happened the entire movie.
Exactly. Harry Styles and Patton Oswalt, who is my Lord and Savior hero, as Pip the Troll. Give me a break.
I was going to say, I think there's going to be a happy medium. To your point, if you've got a large story to tell with a lot of characters and the way you bring them in, I think Disney Plus is a great way to do it, where you introduce characters and then you have, one-offs as movies, where you don't have to spend half of your movie saying who these characters are. You know who they are. And now they're doing something cool with other characters potentially, or telling a story that makes sense on the silver screen. There's a happy medium, because it's really hard to pull those off. And I think, do you want to spend, like I've always said, when a villain gets introduced in the old movies, it's like we spend like 25 minutes with a villain. It's like we barely care about them, or they're hardly developed. So it's like but versus like a Thanos, I think they pulled it off pretty well, because they continue to talk about him. And then when they finally brought him in, it's like, okay, we know who Thanos is. He doesn't just show up and we have to do his backstory in 15 seconds. I think that works and effective. And I would think it would make sense to introduce potentially Nova in the next Guardians film. So they actually introduce him and then maybe make a series and then make more of a galactic film, like Galactic Storm, Farley. Why not? We get a Galactic Storm film. Yay!
You bet. Yay. Oh boy. Galactic Storm, which was of course piggybacking off of, Operation Desert Storm, which what a great connection that was. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Saddam, and that makes total sense. Oh, wow. Yeah. We'll pivot to the next story. And I know Charlie doesn't give much about Voltron, but I do.
I watched Voltron when I was a kid. I absolutely loved it. Oh yeah. I had not only a Voltron with the lions, but I even had the.
Oh, you did? Which one? The Toy Biz, or what was it? Matchbox, or yeah.
I don't know who it, because I was 8 years old. I didn't look at the label, but I also had the Voltron that was the 22 little spaceships or whatever. I had two different versions.
So you had the Matchbox one. So I'm very jealous because the Matchbox was super expensive, was die cast, and was awesome.
Why? Trust me, I had a single mother on a single income. I don't think we had anything that was super expensive. So maybe I had the super knockoff version. Okay. So I don't know what you were talking about.
Okay. Well, there was some really crappy ones that I probably had, but I could never afford the Matchbox, which was fantastic. But going back to this, Voltron was, for anybody who doesn't know, it essentially was the original, like, transforming robots that turned into something big, like that predated Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, predated Transformers, was a Japanese series. Actually, it was essentially 3 different Japanese series, which is pretty funny, kind of like Robotech. And then you had these series that were dubbed and brought, I think, by Harmony Gold, Sunbow, somebody overseas developed them and dubbed them and everything, brought into the U.S. Basically, like this was the fantasy series with lions, and they had to protect a planet where you had to take on the evil Prince Zarkon, and it was great. Loved it. Evil Witch Hagar, and it was crazy, wonky with the little mice that were funny and goofy, and But I
think it was absolutely Sunbow, because Michael Bell, a voice actor who was the voice of Duke and G.I. Joe, he was Starscream in Transformers, and I got to meet him at our last Grand Rapids Comic Con. What a super great guy. Had a couple of Star Trek roles, which is what I was chatting him up about. He even reminded me of a Star Trek role that he had that I had forgotten to ask him about, which was personally very embarrassing. But yeah, this totally felt like a Sunbow because it fell in lockstep with like the vibe of Transformers and G.I. Joe. But anyway.
Absolutely. So, and quite honestly, Voltron, considering it only lasted like a year, and then you had the spin-off with the vehicles, and then there was another series that was hinted on the Matchbox. This is how dumb I am about Voltron. I love Voltron. But they had another series that was 3 robots that basically became one big robot as well. Never released anywhere, but they showed the series on the back of the box. So as a kid, I would go to Toys R Us looking for this, like, where is this Voltron? I don't know, Daddy. Where can you show me where I can find this Voltron? Really, this kid is insane. He's dumb.
It's like the 80s. It's like reading the cereal box. And I love, and now I have to see this Rick and Morty spoof that they show at the bottom of this with is that Rick there drinking his flask? That looks
I think so. But getting back to the mix of this, Voltron the original Voltron with the Lions only ran 1 year, which is kind of crazy considering how much fandom it's supported. It's been recreated many different times, many different ways, and apparently I am behind the Netflix version that came out a couple of years ago is fantastic, apparently. So I need to watch that. But they're trying to bring this to live action. And this could work badly or be really cool, considering we've got the Transformers, other versions. We also got Pacific Rim with, giant robots taking a kaiju, which essentially Voltron is, except it's Transformers. So I really think this is cool. And apparently this is up for grabs. And we've got the Red Notice director, who was big on Netflix, was like the biggest movie in the world, is apparently up for grabs, and studios are trying to secure this property. So with that, I don't even know what to say. I hope this happens, but it could be totally wrong, like Robot Jocks. If everybody remembers Robot Jocks, big robots fighting in the late 80s, early 90s. It's better than that.
When you mentioned Pacific Rim, that's where I figured it would go wrong. By the way, I had to know while we were talking, Voltron from 1984 does stream on Prime Video. That is where you can watch it, according to justwatch.com. So that, for me, is something that I will add to my watch list. Because, I loved it. This was a big one for my brother and I. We really dug it. So I don't know what left you with the impression that I didn't dig it. But
typically robots was not your biggest thing in the world. You liked the G.I. Joe. You liked some other things. So I'm sorry, Charlie. I apologize. But there was one episode where it did cross over with the car robots with Voltron and the Lions.
That's right.
Castle Doom was that was pretty cool. So Eric, I babbled enough. Your thoughts?
Red Notice was not one of my favorite films of all time, so that's not very exciting. And here's what I would say. Having watched episode 1 of Halo and thinking that the story is pretty great, but the CGI is almost unwatchable, like that's where it comes down to. It's like, what is this going to look like in the CGI universe? Because that's really where even if you watch the Netflix series, it's it's great, but like you're not watching it for the acting. You're watching it for the giant robots to fight. So that's the part that you need to nail. Because even in Pacific Rim, if you just don't listen to the talking, you can watch them fight giant robots and sort of get something out of it.
And it
that's
looks cool. Yeah.
They should have could have made it as a silent film. Would have been a huge success.
Just shot it at a weekend Monster Jam, and it would have been fine. But super cheap, and you would have been done. But like that to me is the thing. Is not necessarily who's directing it, but what is the CGI budget, and is it going to look like Michael Bay's Transformers?
Oh my God!
Or Transmorphers, that knockoff movie directed video that came out 3 years later. Yeah.
By the way, just to add an extra sleuth, clicking onto Amazon Prime, 72 episodes in a single season. That's
which is like 36 hours.
It's great work if you can do it. If you can have a 72 episode season, it's great work if you can do it.
You bet. I mean, I thought Star Trek, the original series, had 30 episodes in their first season, but they were an hour long each. Exactly. So yeah, each of these is 23 minutes,
and all scripted by an Oscar winner, I'm assuming.
It ran from September of 1984 to November of 1985, and pretty much more. So 72 weeks. It was never not on.
And it's crazy because typically that was backed behind like a toy campaign. But quite honestly, I told you, like Matchbox potentially had the license, and then they tried to find other licensees, but they didn't have a great toy license at the time.
No, you almost had to find somebody who was going to Japan. If you were in Voltron, you had to have somebody go over there to get you something.
There toys that exist, and then can we market them and put a US label on them? But yeah, because it takes time. Like the Transformers or Robotech, they had stuff off the shelf. They pulled in. They had some toys, but not exactly as sophisticated as they are today with their toys and everything else like that. But we go to the next and last story. This is very cool. I'm a big fan of this, of an actor and a franchise that is going to be a lot of fun, I think. And that is the fact that Misha Collins, who plays Castiel on Supernatural, did it actually for like 12 seasons, is going to be playing Harvey Dent in the new Gotham Knights series that is going to be coming out on the CW. And the whole premise of the show is all about the children of rogues and also Bruce Wayne essentially being set up for some ill-doer. So you essentially got the Batman family coming in full circle and taking on crime. I love Misha Collins. He's great. He just loves his fan base. He's been fantastic. I'm curious about the show because CW has a really crappy track record for starting off good and ending badly.
I mean, but as I just dropped on the group, Flash is going into its 9th season. They're doing something right. I mean, I don't watch it, but people like it, right? So I mean, but yeah, you're right. You're right. Starting great and losing, you lost interest. I lost interest, and every year they'll come along and it's a crossover, all 5 shows, and you and I both go, holy shit, is Legends of Tomorrow still on? Yeah, it's been on for 10 years. You're right. Their shows are just so, So,
it's amazing that a small audience can maintain a show these days because Legends probably attracts maybe 2 million viewers a week, which back in the day that would be like. We're not even greenlighting anything for under like 80 million people. So it's amazing what the precipice is. I tried to watch Naomi on CW, which is a comic I like, but the show is just trash, even though it's done by Ava DuVernay. And I'm like, she's a fantastic Oscar winner. I'm like, but the show just is not good. So I'm curious where this will go. I hope it'll be interesting and be fun. I love Stargirl. I love that show tremendously. And I really liked, Black Lightning. I thought that was a cool show too, and that ended after like 3 or 4 seasons because I think that was the right time to end it. So I'll be curious to see where this goes, but maybe they just need to regenerate this. Actually, after Flash and Legends of Tomorrow ends, they need some new blood to come in and probably mix it up and not do what the Arrowverse did, do something new.
Will it ever end? It's kind of like they probably said the same thing about The Simpsons. Well, when The Simpsons ends, ... I don't know. We'll see. But they have to age out eventually, right?
Exactly. And Eric, do you watch any of the CW shows, or is this of interest to you?
I don't watch any of the CW shows. I've dabbled, as Charlie was sort of alluding to. I've sort of like jumped in and jumped out. Nothing's really grabbed me. This is fine. But as you and I were joking before we started recording, I don't know if the world needs more Batman stuff. Like, I don't know. Do we need more shows and movies? And like, do we need that?
Nobody ever.
Batman. Yeah.
Nobody ever really asked. Well, you know what? It's funny because we're going to talk in next week. We're going to talk about the Morbius film, which is a Spider-Man movie with a Spider-Man character movie without Spider-Man that Todd, myself, and our guests that we're going to have with us are all really dreading going to have to see because it just the early reviews are terrible. But even before,
terrible.
I mean, those two Venom movies. That was a movie that I slept long enough and snored long enough that my wife had to wake me up. It was so friggin' Woody Harrelson as Carnage. Oh no.
Yeah,
Well,
that Venom movie took Venom and then just lowered the bar. So
yeah. Well, you could take the bar down to the sub basement, down to the sewer pipes, down to the Indian burial ground. I mean, you just keep going down.
Well, one of the weirdest pieces of feedback I heard from somebody who saw the movie early was that more than half of the things in the trailer aren't in the film.
Oh,
what?
Good. That's a good plan. That's a great plan.
He was like, yeah, all the stuff that was in the trailer isn't in the movie.
Okay. That's
All right.
good. That's a good way to set expectations. I like that.
So I'm assuming it's Jared Leto dressed up as a vampire doing 30 Seconds to Mars songs for 2 hours is what I see.
I love that.
Oh my God.
I love that.
So,
Or the Charlie, you saw the House of Gucci? Maybe he's just doing the House of Gucci as a vampire.
Oh well, but without the fat suit. I like it. Okay,
where he's needed a vampire.
He's playing a chubby Italian, going, "I want to suck your blood. Give me the Gucci. Give me the Gucci sock." Oh my God!
I love this. I love this. Yeah, I mean, the best thing I can hope for is, and that's funny because you mentioned like things that are not in the movie, the trailers. That would be a perfect like topic eventually to say best parts of movies that were in the trailer that were never in, like Austin Powers. They talk about the sexy stews that was never in Austin Powers. It was just like, it's like, why did they do this?
It's
was
just,
that like the deleted scenes?
Just a pure bait and switch. So anyway, yes, we got a little off topic, but I don't even know. I have no idea how we started talking about this, but who cares?
I don't know.
Let's wrap it up,
Charlie. I blame you.
All right, I quit. All right, let's wrap it up. So that's it for the news. But Todd, now it's time to get an Uber or a gypsy cab or whatever it is. We're going down to Scugtown, Zero Town, the worst part of the multiverse. That's right. It's time to go down to the Geek Easy.
Talk nerdy to me. Talk nerdy to me.
We're sitting in the Geek Easy, drinks are poured, music is being played, and we are ready to get our nerd on. This week, Eric, you kick it off with what you've been watching or reading in the world of nerd.
So as I said, I've been watching the Batman and kind of all the things that are connected to it. Reading wise, I've been going back and kind of catching up on Moon Knight to get ready for, I know we're filming this before this comes out, but I'm sure it'll be out when the episode comes out. So kind of figure out where the Moon Knight series is going to land. And then also I'm super into Noctura, which is an image book.
Really?
There's this moment in time that blocks out the sun, and everyone that's outside of the light turns into these weird monsters that eats everybody that's in the light. It's a very cool thing that I'm super into. And then like I said, gunslinger spawn. And then before we started recording, as far as video games, because again, that's where I spend a lot of my time. I'm just sucking endless wind at Elden Ring, but I love every minute of it.
So Nocturna, is that, you said image, that's an image book, right?
Yep.
That may be on
Scott Snyder writes that.
Okay.
So
perfect. And that might be on Comixology Plus. That's the service that I typically get for all my like indies and stuff. So
it should be. Yeah, it should be.
Okay, very cool. Very cool. Very nice. And I was going to say on Moon Knight, what specifically are you reading to prepare yourself? Because there's so many different versions of Moon Knight. I mean, it's like, I don't know what version we're going to get in the series.
Yeah, I don't either. So I literally just kind of let Marvel Unlimited guide me, and whatever it had, like, here's the Moon Knight stuff we're talking about. I'm like, well, that seems like a good place to point.
And they've been, and I check their new releases weekly, and yes, they do stay largely topical. They're cranking out a lot of stuff. I've been happy on Marvel Limited to see they're dumping out a lot of the stuff that I've been after them for the 10 years I've been a member. Like, give me all the issues of Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. Give me all Marvel Team Up. Give me all, because I love all that old shit. Give me Marvel 2-in-1, you know?
Yeah.
I dig all that old stuff. Todd can't hack it. He doesn't do old stuff. Todd,
I did do some old stuff this week, Charlie, and I'll actually get into that as we pivot. So, and Eric, well, actually pivot into me because you mentioned Halo, the TV series. So I think we all three watched Halo, the TV series. So this is going to come from a person who I've played all of the Halo games, excluding, I think, the real-time strategy game. I have not watched or I have not read on any of the Halo comics or novels. I have not watched much of the Halo other series that have been out previously. So I know the actual core story and the gameplay and everything like that, but I don't know everything that everybody that is a big nerd about Halo would love. Charlie has not played the games, but just watched it.
Absolutely no reference. So I was the virgin to watching it. So going in kind of with I know it's a game and there's Master Chief and blah, 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 and blah, but he's like Iron Man with a bunch of guns or whatever. That's all I know.
Yeah. So with that background, I knew this was going to be essentially a different timeline, similar to Star Trek with the Kelvin timeline, where they were going to basically say,
come on. Oh, sorry.
Well, I get this where they did this, Charlie, because I've said, I've played this game since the Xbox original launched. The story with Halo is a little bit of a happy mess. The main protagonist, Chief, is essentially has said probably 100 lines of dialogue max. That's not good for a TV series. You need some type of interaction, kind of like with The Witcher. Even though Garrett doesn't say a lot, he says enough that means something. In this instance, with the main character, the way they did it, it makes sense. You're going to pivot a little bit, tell a different story. I get it, but you need certain elements of Halo that make sense and fits the theme. I think that's the core with anything you adapt. We're going to get it actually in the topic is best adaptations, is essentially capture the heart of it. And if you pivot a little bit, don't kill what makes sense with it, but highlight what makes the hallmark of the series really ring and sing in a lot of ways. So I will say that I loved what they did in the first 15 minutes of the series. If you're a fan of the game, there are certain things that are going to sing to you, which is going to be the sound of his armor depleting, his shield depleting, and then waiting for it to essentially replenish, Charlie. So essentially you're waiting for you're getting nailed and you start hearing this beep, 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 like you're going to die, like your shield's going to go away. You have to find cover until it gets back and get back into the fight. They did this in the actual show, which I thought was cool. And people that aren't playing the game would never notice that. But for fans of it, they did like it. Now, to Eric, you mentioned about CGI and things like that. I thought this was okay. I totally get it. It looked weird at times, but when they did certain things, I thought it made a lot of sense. When Chief was running, and that's the whole thing. But Halo is essentially about the super group of super soldiers called the Spartans, who are basically genetically engineered, children taken away from their families, brought in to basically be badasses who are often 7 feet tall and weird, but they're put in these suits. And essentially agents of the UNNC, basically Earth's defense force, to take on this evil alien race, the Covenant, which is the Covenant goes in, Charlie, you're like this. They take on other races of aliens and people they conquer and absorb them into their army. So you get different groups. So you get these little grunts that are funny. You get those big guys. They're big badass. They have the laser swords. You get other aliens too. You get the brutes that almost look like gorillas. So you do get this weird mix of it because they absorb races and use them as their forces. And
so
it's almost like a religious cult.
Like the Green Lantern Corps has all the different whatever.
Exactly, except it's against the cult called Covenant, which is this weird group which makes these Halo rings, which are almost like matter transferent layers, which can bring in people and do things. And that's why it's called Halo. They have the Halo rings.
It's like Green Lantern, but it's Amway, is what you're saying. It's like a
kind of like that. Yes, okay. Yes. And then we're going to Michigan. Yes. Anyway, so that's why I saw, and they're kind of going a smaller with their it's Chief and a girl. And that's and a character you can relate to. So that's what they're going in this series. I'm fine with that, but I understand why people do not like this that are big fans. So I don't know. So Eric, you've also played this. You're familiar with the property.
I mean, I bought the original Xbox specifically to play this game. So yeah, I mean, I am very familiar. And here's what I would say about I loved some of the fan service in the 15 minutes, but I just feel like if you're going to go through the trouble of trying to make this armor look like it looks in the game, and you're going to go through all the, overshield sounds and those sorts of things. There's just a couple moments in that 15 minutes where Master Chief looks like Gumby and he's like moving in a way that a human doesn't move. And I just feel like you can't do that in 2022 and expect to kind of have a long shelf life of people wanting to watch that. And I guess I would put, and as opposed to being somebody who just complains about it, I guess compare that to the cut scenes in Halo Infinite that look better than the show you just watched. That's kind of a problem.
Yeah,
from the CGI part of it, exactly.
Yeah, Charlie. So, what did you think? I mean, you're not familiar with the property, but did you like it as a standalone?
We watched this. It comes out on Wednesday, the same as Picard. So we watched
Thursday,
Picard.
Actually.
Yeah. Well, that is the same.
Oh, you said Wednesday.
No, okay. I said it came out as the same day as Picard, which is
Thursday. Yeah,
correct.
Yeah.
So anyway, we watched Picard, and then we jumped into this, and April and I had no familiarity. So from the point of a 100% layman, loved it. But it's funny when you say, well, hardcore of the game don't like it, aren't liking it because of this thing and that thing, and it's different or whatever it is. And it just absolutely brings the thought to me, all the people who refer to Star Trek currently being produced as new Trek, and it's not my Star Trek, so this is not my Halo, but it's something being made contemporaneously for a new audience. And for someone, I think we're the perfect, my wife April is even a better example of the litmus test because she didn't know a damn thing. She doesn't play video games at all. And was like, well, I watched the story and I enjoyed it because it was, rip-roaring science fiction. And it was, setting the stage for this and that. You can't make this uber heavy, super inside baseball right out the gate kind of show like this and then really expect it to take off. And this is blowing up. I did see some headline that said, it's the most watched program on Paramount Plus over a 24-hour period, so it's outstripping Star Trek already, which makes sense. It's a big, different, wide audience, and I totally get that. But yes, of course, there's going to be those who said, well, it's not enough like the game for it to feel like this and that for me, and that's just, you're going to have those kind of people. But I thought it was, whatever it is that they did, I don't think it needs to change right now. I enjoyed for our first episode. It was great. You've got, yes, you're very subservient, controlled by, basically basically he was RoboCop. They're running him with the joystick and pushing buttons to make shit happen on the ship. And then he touches the big old Halo. It's funny. I've seen that as basically as a role play prop in like GameStop or whatever, that big swordy thing. That the
laser sword,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're running around. So that I was familiar with because I've seen it in GameStop and on the website, whatever it is. But yeah, once that gets a hold of him, that's his big awakening. And that reminded me, that's a plot line that's pulled from something else that seems super familiar, but I can't really put my finger on it. It was like, well, I was part of the gang and then I touched the stone and then I remembered my life from before and da-da-da-da-da. So that seems very tropish, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to lead to something better on. So I'm engaged. We're going to continue watching. I totally dug it.
It was an interesting decision, and Eric will probably point this out. No hint of the actual Halo music, which is very iconic, which seemed like an odd choice.
That was an odd choice. I would agree with Charlie, though. When the action died down, I actually really dug the story, and because I'm not the guy that yells at the clouds about canon. Like, I want you to, if you can keep the kind of the soul of whatever it is that you're trying to adapt, go and tell your story. I really thought the stuff that was happening in the ship, and as that episode ends, I enjoyed it and wanted to see where it went. I just would like them to kind of dial in some of that CGI so it feels a little bit more realistic. Because when he's on the ground, he feels like a 7-foot tall killing machine. But then when he's jumping, it sort of feels like not so much, right?
Yeah, yeah. And it'll be interesting this is episode 1. We haven't got more than that. We're going to see more of that as well. And we'll see what this. And they already pivoted because we've got an essence of a human-like character partnering with the Covenant, which is definitely different than we've ever seen before. So that's unique. Yeah, that is very unique. So I could see like a human character been abducted as a human and indoctrinated as a child from that's kind of a cool concept that I like. That I will see where this goes. But obviously, yes, you play the games, you do this, but I think this is a great, to your point, Charlie, you're new, you liked it. So I think that's the whole point.
Well, yeah, that is what they're shooting for without a doubt.
Absolutely. So check it out if you want. It's free for 30 days if you don't have Xbox system with Game Pass. Great that is there. And I think at T-Mobile, I get a year of Paramount Plus for free. So that's kind of cool too, with ads. Sorry. But yeah, here we go.
Okay.
Yes. And then very quickly, I wanted to go over cool new series. Actually, it's already complete on Apple TV Plus. It's called Severance. This is such a crazy concept. I saw the first episode. I'm going to watch more because this is just weird and odd. This is by Ben Stiller, which is just odd. He's gone and really created a new career for himself. He made I think it was called The Prisoners of Denimora, which is essentially about a prison break in a prison in New Jersey, I believe. Now he's made this series, which is it's a weird sci-fi, almost a Black Mirror-esque approach on the fact that it's essentially saying, what if you had the opportunity to split yourself, to say, I could have my work self and my home self, and you go to work and you're cut, and there's a person that does your job.
Right. I've seen the trailer for this.
Yeah, you've seen the trailer. I'm not sure if everybody else has, but basically it's saying essentially your work self and your personal self do not overlap. You have no memories of yourself at home and vice versa. You show up, you basically don't have any experience. You go home, you have no experience. The person that is at work has no experience of a life outside of work and vice versa. This is a crazy show. So many weird things, the way it's recorded. Adam Scott.
It's Adam Scott. Yeah, that's what I remember.
Yeah, and he's phenomenal in this role. And just really good acting. It's really interesting. John Turturro's in it, a very unique role. Very odd, very unique. And I'm really all in to see where this goes because they cover on a lot of like the ethical implications and all of these things. And then there's an element of mystery at the end. I'm like, this is going to be a crazy ride. It's 8 episodes max. It's very short, but it's Apple TV. So, I mean, it's $5 a month, so it's not a big deal to actually subscribe to it. But I think this is a really cool idea, and I love the tone they set, and it's very weird. So Severance, I say check it out.
That sounds super cool. I don't even know how I would have seen the trailer because we have Apple Plus. I think it comes and goes. I got it for free, or you've got it, or something. Yeah. So, but it's been a while since I've watched something on it. So that sounds kind of cool, and I like Adam Scott as well. Got his start. I know I've mentioned before as an extra on Star Trek First Contact. He was the
very nice.
He was the helmsman of the Defiant, and actually had a couple of lines right before, when they were in the battle with the Borg and they were all damaged. He said, "There's another ship coming in. It's the Enterprise," and that was his line. And you didn't see him again, so for all you know, he got assimilated later on. But oh well, it happens. Well, cool. Well, I'll take us home. We saw a couple of different things. We saw Dog, the movie Dog, out at the theaters on Friday night. And this is a touching tale. I feel like it was probably one of these inspired by true events, but not necessarily a true story. That's the catch-all these days. You can say something is inspired by true events, and it could be anything. Todd, our podcast was inspired by true events. You and me, buddies in college, and then here we are. But no, this was great. It was Channing Tatum and a dog. It was, do you remember actor Ethan Suplee from the 90s? Huge fat guy he's now super ripped.
He was Randy on My Name is Earl, which I am on the last episode of watching. So yes.
Right. But he appears in this film as well, extremely ripped, super fit. It's just like, wow, there is hope for all of us. It was totally awesome. But no, this is a great story. So in this, Channing Tatum is a battle injured vet who's been cashiered out of the Rangers. His best friend had a canine when they were fighting, overseas in Afghanistan. Who both, it seems like the dog and Channing Tatum were injured at the same time years back. And then his friend who owned the dog committed suicide, and now in present time it's Channing Tatum's job to take the dog, who is also suffering from dog PTSD, from Portland, Oregon, down to Nogales, Mexico, for this guy's funeral, and it is a road trip adventure kind of throughout. And it's super touching. We're dog people, so it's just my wife is loving all the dog stuff in there, and how you see them kind of bond in between. Not a genre film, doesn't have to do obviously with anything related to geek culture, but it was very touching. Todd, you have dog. You have a dog. I have a dog. You have a dog now, don't you? Did you get a new dog? I'm trying to remember. Am I crazy?
Me or Eric?
Yeah, you.
I've had Rufus for almost 2 years.
Okay, there you go. And what about you, Eric? Are you a pet person?
Yes, I have 2 dogs currently and a cat somewhere wandering around here. So
Yeah, we have 3 cats and a dog, and the dog is a whole lot less trouble. But anyway, very very touching film. And then for something else not genre, see, I'm the one who pushes the envelope. I'm always seeing stuff that's not genre because I saw Halo, but we saw this. We turned it on Hulu to the Dark Side of the '90s. It was a documentary about the '90s, which is of course when we grew up. Eric, I'm assuming you're probably close to the same age as us. Maybe, but we're in our late 40s, so we were going to college in the 90s and in high school in the 90s. But it was this 10-part series about the shady side of teen TV at 90210, or it was the shady side of the East Coast versus West Coast rap war was one episode, and one episode was about the grunge scene and about all the dirty. The last one was about this high fashion in the supermodel scene. So just every dirty scumbag, dirty underhanded trick, horrible, racist, sexist thing that possibly could have happened was exposed throughout this series, and this aired on probably some cable net somewhere, but obviously
2020 probably.
Yeah, but it potentially, but it was absolutely fascinating with all the things that we just paid no attention to when we were growing up, because it was way adult grown up stuff for us.
And there was no social media either.
Exactly. Well, one episode was about Y2K and dial-up internet, and we chuckled our way through some of it, and some of the rest of it we were like, oh my god, like in particular the high fashion supermodel industry, all the coercion and Harvey Weinstein and all that kind of stuff. Just and you want to talk about it, but it was fascinating. Again, it's on Hulu. If you're of an age where you remember these things in a more innocent fashion, it's a fascinating watch. I'd recommend it.
Very, very, very cool. Well, that is it for the Geek Easy. So now it's time for us to get on a prop plane, and we're going to go visit our favorite vacation destination, and that's where the mutants rule, and that's the Thunderdome.
Welcome to another edition of Thunderdome!
We are good. Thank you, Tino. We're sitting in Thunderdome, where the mutants have been gathered for a topic or a game to be entertained. And this week, we're talking about adaptations. You heard us talk about Halo and did it live up to expectations. We've had other versions. I mean, I remember when Charlie, you and I saw the Spawn movie with John Leguizamo as a clown. And we're like, that seemed interesting.
Yeah, that's a word that you could use for it. Interesting is a word.
And now he's Bruno in Kanto. So there we go. So that's a good thought topic in regards to adaptations. We so often want, as geeks, the things we love to peer beyond the original place they were created. I love books, I love comics, I love games, all those things. And it's like, ultimately we say, oh, the ultimate destination would be if they could be a TV show or a film. We all grew up with Wizard magazine saying, this is the cast we'd have being those characters. And it's
right.
Like, oh, you get a wrestler that looks like Sabretooth, or, it's like, oh, that's just enough. And
it's a winner. It's
not. Exactly. No. It's quite honestly, it's probably not. It's funny because even now people are saying Daniel Radcliffe should be the next Wolverine. I'm like, I guess because he's short, maybe. But
I mean, we know he's a great actor, so I can't necessarily disagree with that.
It could be great. It's just like we never thought Daniel Radcliffe could be Weird Al, but that's going to happen.
But I mean, but again, fan casting can be done to beat the band. It just doesn't really mean anything.
Absolutely. So
anyway,
yeah. So we get into like adaptations and things that have not been adapted, and things have been adapted badly, and things that have been adapted well. So I think we should go from there. So Eric, you're the guest.
So Eric, you figured this out for us. Go for it.
Eric,
yeah. What do you got?
So we're gonna throw you to the flames. So no, in a way, I mean, I want the good and the bad from your perspective. I mean, if you think about things you loved, and it's like, I would love to see it adapted, and it's gone well, gone bad, maybe hasn't happened yet, but you hear it's going to happen. What do you think? I mean, is it a good thing to want what you want to be on another medium?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always nice to see the things that you love shared with people wherever they are, right? Because if they're obviously not already consuming the book, the comic book, the video game, or whatever, and you can put it on a big screen or put it on a streaming service, then obviously that, it's fun. My opinion, it's fun to have new people join the community. I might be might be speaking out of turn here, but it's fun to have new people join the community to talk to you about the thing that you love. And so I would say, as a lifelong fan of Todd McFarlane, that John Leguizamo Spawn film was pretty terrible. And you know, I would say probably the same thing about anything that has Michael Bay and Transformers connected to it, and or G.I. Joe. But
they just can't get it right.
No,
can't
and even the Snake Eyes is awful. But you want to know good.
I haven't seen that yet. Maybe I will.
I'll just tell you, there's a 500-foot python in it for no reason in particular.
No,
but okay,
just no.
But you asked about the good, and I would say, Todd, in our universe, one of the hardest genres I feel to adapt to film or TV is video games, because, you know, they're 100-hour or 200-hour endeavors with DLC, and the hours and hours and hours of doing that makes it hard to kind of boil it down to a simple sugar. But I would say right off the bat, two recent ones that I dig. I really had fun at the Uncharted movie. I'm sure I'm going to get hate
for sure. We talked that one up several weeks ago, and we totally dug it. And again, I went in with nothing like, oh, there's a guy or whatever that's I've seen in something or other, and I totally dug it. It was a lot of fun.
And the other one that I was pleasantly surprised by, I actually dig what they're doing with Sonic. I think it's super.
Oh, yes. Oh, totally. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those would be the same two bright spots I would pick without even knowing things about video games, but just being able to pick out a shitty movie. You know, those two are great.
So yeah, those would be the two kind of shining stars. I mean, as far as like books, I really enjoyed out of the 90s. I liked the Fincher adaptation of Fight Club. I think a lot of people are ill would probably agree with that. And then, you know, the list that you sent to prep for the show, a lot of those I would agree with of being completely horrible. But that would be kind of my list off the top of my head.
Ooh, Todd, Wing Commander. What'd you talk about that one?
Yeah, it's like Mark Hamill's Wing Commander. Yeah, with, also your favorite, Charlie.
Matthew Lillard. Can't stand.
No, well, Biff was in the original Wing Commander PC games.
Oh, Thomas. I met him when you and I were at one of our Chicago shows. Very nice guy.
His name was, I think it was a Joker was his name or something like that. He had a name. He was in those games with Mark Hamill, and when they brought the movie forward with Freddie Prinze Jr. and Matthew Lillard, not so good.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of weirdness to these lists. Like, I'm skimming through the movies one, and Todd, they've got one of your all-time favorites on here is The Worst of Wild Wild West. I'm looking at the the movie adaptation. It says a movie adaptation because it was for a game. I didn't know Borat. I guess it did adapt it from another show because he was in the Ali G show.
The Ali G show.
People love that. I never saw Entourage. I enjoyed the South Park movie. I don't know anything about the Airbender, but boy, that had a bad rep. And it's funny they mentioned the 21 Jump Street as an adaptation, but there was no connective tissue with the exception of actually to the Johnny Depp and I think Peter DeLuise showed up just in a cameo, but otherwise it was just kind of nothing. Would you call Scooby-Doo a best adaptation? I mean, it could be, I suppose.
I like the James Gunn movies. I thought those are absolutely hilarious. Like Scrappy-Doo being like the enemy. Yeah. I really enjoyed those adaptations. Yeah,
I listened to a 3-part podcast about how shitty the Simpsons movie was, and these people really liked it. I thought it was fine. I watched it with my older son at the time it came out, and he loved it, so I guess I have fond memories. How does someone say the adaptation of Baywatch is worse than the original? Because this was a point. I mean, the film was a satirical comedy where the show was the show. What are you going to say about the show, you know?
Well, Baywatch Nights put David Hasselhoff as a supernatural investigator at night. I mean, how could The Rock not make it better versus David Hasselhoff?
Exactly. And then over on the comic book adaptations, they got some real softballs here. Catwoman, which I've still never seen, but for God's sakes, nobody likes it. 1978's Richard Donner's Superman was spectacular. It set the stage for everything that followed. Todd, did we ever see Shaquille O'Neal as Steel? I don't know that we ever saw that one.
Oh, God. We may have to watch it because I've never seen it. I just know of it. I have not seen it. Eric, have you seen Steel?
I have not. No. But I will.
I think we were smart.
I'll join you.
I would be on board with having a little blurb about Steel. I enjoyed the Hellboy movie films. That's in here without knowing anything at all. But my God, Batman and Robin with Alicia Silverstone and Chris O'Donnell. I mean, this was the thing that put a bullet in the head of a Batman for 8 years. They were like, nope, can't do it. And then we get obviously Nolan, The Dark Knight. Todd, that's one of your all-time favorites, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that was a recovery from its low point, and we've seen better things since. It is funny. I mean, if you look at these things, I mean, Fantastic Four, I would say, still is wanting for a good adaptation, and I'm hoping with Marvel, the MCU, we will finally get it. But I mean, this is like we've had 3 adaptations. We had the version with Roger Corman, which was never released, but I saw, which actually probably was the most accurate representation, but not good. And then we got the I can't remember who did it for Fox when it was that series.
Those and then 2 films from the aughts, and then the one that came out in 15 that was famously, if you go back in our archives, I took a very famous bullet for the rest of the team for Todd.
Where is that actually able to be screened, Charlie?
Well, it's a Fox. So, but yeah, I watched this one and it was like, get me out of this fucking theater. I cannot deal watching this shit. Oh my God.
If I'm wrong, wasn't it so bad that Marvel actually stopped making the comic for a while to like get people to complete?
Yes. Oh my God.
That and X-Men, right? I mean, they try to distance themselves from X-Men and Fantastic Four because they thought Inhumans is going to be the next big thing, and we don't have to own X-Men and Fantastic Four because we're going to be all in Inhumans, and then we saw Inhumans.
Right? Yeah, they killed.
No, we didn't.
The Fantastic Four.
Nobody did.
4 years, which is, I mean, that was Marvel. That was the comic that started Marvel Comics in the modern age, and they killed it. It was so bad. But yeah, you're right. They decided to put absolutely all their chips down on. Oh my God, Todd! It is on Disney Plus. It is. Fantastic Four 2015. So this makes me wish that I had beaten you in our horrible March Madness bracket contest because I could have made you watch this.
And Eric, that is something we're actually doing. Is I won the bracket for the March Madness, so I said the winner gets to choose. The loser has to watch something. So I'm going to make Charlie and our friend John watch something and have to come back and report out about it. It's not like they actually have to watch and say I watched it. No, they actually have to tell me. Enough to tell me that they actually watched it. So this is going to be fun. Yes. We'll see what that is eventually, and we'll see how it goes. I'll try to be kind. But yeah, I was thinking about that, and I think about I try to pivot from the best, and I think about things that I did not expect to be good. And it's a gaming franchise I love that's also based on a Polish book series, and that's The Witcher. I love the game franchise.
Yep.
And that is a take. The gaming is different than the actual book series, even though it's kind of the one universe. And they adapted the books into the Netflix series, and I absolutely love that too. So, I mean, that's a bright spot. And Netflix has actually done a pretty good job on adapting video games. We saw with Castlevania, with their Netflix series as well. And I think that's amazing that we get that. I mean, at times they cancel things if audiences don't come forward, but it doesn't mean that it's not a good representation. So I'm hopeful we'll get more of those good things. And I don't want to just denigrate the bad and the old, because obviously we're in a different space, but I mean, I'm hoping we're going to see some new franchises come forward from Sony. Hopefully we're going to see a great Last of Us Part 2 or Last of Us on HBO Max, which is being developed. Obviously we have the Sonic franchise, which is being developed. And I know the Mass Effect series, which I absolutely love, and I think is one of the best universes that's been created in regards to just a concept of a science fiction universe from video games. It's going to go forward with Amazon as well, and I'm highly excited about that. So, is there any that you guys are excited about that actually hasn't come forward yet, but we know is coming?
Man, I mean, we talk about this kind of stuff every week, and I'm drawing a total blank. You've got like the Star Trek series that's all about, what is it? The Michelle Yeoh series that hasn't come forward. Are you excited for that? I guess my brain was stuck in about adaptation, and that series has kind of gone silent. I don't really know what's going on with that. So yeah, there's not. I don't know. I'm struggling to think of it. I don't know. Eric, back to you.
Sure. So I would say as we're sticking with the good, I really liked Dune, so I'm excited to see where that ends up going. And as far as one that I'd love to see them take a crack at, I'm late to this party, but the first Joe Abercrombie trilogy that starts with the Blade itself is like a super cool medieval story. I mean, but each book is like 1,100 pages. It's sort of a Wheel of Time kind of universe you're leaping into. But I devoured that book in a weekend, and that would be one that I would like to see, because a world without a Game of Thrones universe, it sort of needs, I feel like it needs something like that. You know, we're in between Witcher seasons and all that stuff. So those would be two. And I would agree with you, Todd, that The Witcher is an excellent adaptation. And I think it helps, quite honestly, it helps when you've got a champion, you know, when Henry is like so into the character, I think it makes it so that it can kind of pull a project like that through.
Absolutely. And I think of like the fact that we are going to get more and more of these coming through because people need to create content. And what's great for content, existing universes where there's a fan base. And so you're going to get that.
And I want to go back real quick to what you said about Castlevania. And I would like to see Netflix do more of that, because when they originally launched Castlevania, we got 4 episodes. They were like saying, hey, let's see if
how this goes.
You like this?
Let's take a peek. What are you thinking?
And that's one of the things that I like about these streaming services, if they would take more chances like that to put 3 or 4 episodes out, or even 2 if you have a pilot and then +1, just to see if there's an audience that will go find it. You know, to what you guys were talking about with the CW, clearly you don't need a very large audience to keep something afloat for 10 or 11 seasons. That might be a fun place to see other things adapted, as to your point, Todd, with the proverbial content hole that we have to keep filling.
Yeah.
You need content. You need to establish
the content hole.
Hey,
there
you go. There's the name of the. We always like to name the episode in process when we're doing Code 47.
The content hole.
I think the content hole is the name of this episode. So Todd, make a note of it.
There you go.
Yes, and Charlie, I think of like shows you've really glommed onto is like The Boys, and I've loved Invincible
for sure.
And those are, and Amazon has like done a great job with those too. I'm like, I don't even know that would have been possible in the past, that considering the level of like maturity and content that you just can't show to a broad audience. It's crazy. I mean, there is depravity and guts and gore, and it's fun, and you can do that, and it can survive. And that's a new thing we never got before on the silver screen, because you just like, it has to be, an audience has to go to it for it to exist. And this is great.
Right.
I mean, we really are in a renaissance of like content for all ages. You can get Bluey on Apple TV Plus for those parents that want something that's fun for all ages, and then you get something for adults as well that kids shouldn't watch, and that's fine. You can really adapt the audience you want to reach out to. So I love this. So thank you, everyone, for your thoughts on this episode. And obviously we are on Twitter. So if you want to tell us where you think we've not highlighted the right things that have been adapted well or horribly, let us know on Twitter at SeekFriendsU. And with that note, Eric, thank you for joining us. Tell people where they can find you on the interwebs.
I am very easy to find. You just use my first and last name, Eric, ERIC, and Hultgren, HULTGREN, and you will find me on all of the channels that you can find me. All of them. Yes.
Well, thank goodness there's not like an Eric Holst 8572. Like there's a million people that have the same name.
I'm sure there is, but I, a point of pride for me is I'm the first 2 pages of Google under my first name. So you will find me first. So there you go.
That's how you do it. That is how you do it.
This is a man who knows his optimization. Not too shabby. Oh my goodness. Well, as always, you can find me over on Twitter at the C3, spell it out. And as famously mentioned, my lovely wife, April, and I run the Michigan chapter of the Star Trek International Fan Club. Todd, point of order. I just received a big promotion today. I am now an 07 in the club. I am a fleet captain. So you may now address me as fleet captain, Charles Carden.
I will never do that.
I know that you won't. But at any rate, you can see us. You can find us online at USS Grand Petoskey, across all the socials and our website, and at various Comic-Cons around the state. I also try to update the content at our Secret Friends Unite Facebook page with things that are interesting. Somehow that causes us to lose members. I don't know why, but I will just have to try to find more obnoxious content to get rid of, some of the dead weight. We'll see what happens. But no, we love all of our listeners. Please find us, of course, on the podcasting service of your choice with our 4 great shows. Todd, back to you.
Yes, you can refer to me as Captain Todd Oxtra, as
Nope.
I was.
Right, damn it!
As I was a captain in the actual Air Force, retired, or separated, as you will.
How did they separate you? Kick your ass out the door? Boop.
I said, "Good day, sir. I'm leaving, and I'm finding my family in Minnesota." There you will. Yes, I'm Eoxtra on Twitter. Join me there to as I engage with people I enjoy and reach out to companies that do me wrong. So there you go. Yes, and if you want to game with me, I'm at Spartion98 on Xbox and Switch, and Spartion1998 on PlayStation. So there you go.
Very
weekend.
Exciting. Friends, as always, thank you for joining us. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring, and to keep on trucking.
Be the hero, not the villain.
In the truck.
And I'll form the head.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow @SecretFriendsU on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.